So everything fits within the AMM. So you could put in an order for any random pair. Let's say like Dogecoin AVAX, like something that nobody is really like trading. There's no order book for that exists anywhere on any centralized exchange. But you can put in a limit order on THORChain for that. And because we have liquidity in the pools, whenever your swap will get filled because of the price, you get filled, and it just goes through the pools like a regular swap. So your liquidity just sits outside the pool, and then if the price is adjust enough to fill your swap, then you just get your coins out.
This podcast is sponsored by Coin ATM Radar. When buying crypto with cash, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting some random person in a random place. And unlike an exchange, which could freeze your account, you truly own all the crypto you buy. With Coin ATM Radar, you could find crypto ATMs and other services where you can buy and sell cryptocurrencies for cash. On their website, you can search by coin, address, if the ATM supports selling as well as buying, and you can also search by geo area, country, state, city. You can also check and compare actual current fees at different ATMs. If you want to find out more, head over to coinatmradar.com, which is coinatmradar.com. So, hey everyone, I'm joined by the one and only FamiliarCow, or Tyler from Nine Realms. How's it going, man?
Hey, what's going on? Joel, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. Lots going on, of course, as always, but the cross-chain space is something that I haven't been, it's not my bread and butter. I'm much more in the digital cash / privacy space, but it's pulled me in constantly since the ChaosNet days of THORChain, when I was kind of using that because it solved some big problems in my side of the space. And so obviously I've been paying a lot of attention, wearing my Maya shirt today, of course. THORChain's been on one hell of a ride, let's just say, over the last few years. And I've had a lot of people on to talk about that kind of stuff. We have kind of covered into, THORChain had this, started off the cross-chain space. Things did well. And then we hit, then THORFi hit, which was, a set of features that actually got me really excited. Let me just be very honest about that. I really liked a lot of those from an end user perspective. Ended up having a little bit of a blow up. TCY and, Alux to the rescue, the Mayans to the rescue. Things got sorted out. And then quiet building. So let's kind of launch into what's happened since then, after like TCY being the investment token kind of thing, that the revenue share token that was created to sort of make THORFi people whole. After that, what else has happened? Let's just get right into it. What else is happening?
So that was happening around early March. And so the first basically half the year, sorry, not even March, that was in May. And the first half of the year was basically entirely consumed by, THORFi recovery, just like, all right, get the network back stable. There's just like a lot of it's like turnover in general, and then just like, all right, how do we just continue operations and keep going? Which obviously like TCY was happening, back in May, and then since then it's just been continuing on the roadmap, basically rebuilding the team. It's kind of like figuring out who's going to be doing what and what the priorities are, and actually like getting to a place where we can just like chip at like the pace that we want to and the features that we want to. So since then there's been just a couple of things that we've done to just improve the network and just continue business as normal, including just like regular operational things. Like a lot of the THORChain dev work is pretty boring. It's just like maintenance, fixing problems that come up, because it's like one of the most complex code bases of like in all of crypto, just because of all the different edge cases you have to cover for.
Like
we do so many chains.
Not THORFi, like the ChaosNet stuff. I can't believe that none of that has happened since, seeing how complex the whole thing is.
THORChain is like, a couple 100,000 lines of code that we ship and update out every 3 weeks. So we just like, there's always a lot going on, because there's always just like like just ship mode. And that with that is always like putting out fires and figuring out like why things go wrong when they do, and then that just like adds more onto it. So it's been I think slightly slower for us being able to ship stuff out just because bandwidth has been so constrained. But at the same time, it is business as normal. Like we haven't been able to do as much on like all right, let's get Solana out the door, like type stuff that was definitely like much closer when we were looking at this like last year. But like at this point, we're finally actually close to some of these. We have shipped some of these major features that we've been talking about for a while, and the ones that we haven't are like very close on the radar. So it's just been kind of like regrouping and making sure like people know the priorities. We've onboarded a lot of new devs, so there's been all the Rujira devs who have been great. New people working on Thor node, new people at Nine Realms, and just like and also just like Chad coming back to just really just hammer down some new features and things. So we've had a couple new features that we can talk about that we shipped pretty recently for THORChain, and then we have some stuff that's coming up. Wherever you want to dive in.
Yeah. So let's just start with the things that have been shipped. So first off, which ones are they?
Yeah. So most recently, we have Memoless transactions and limit orders. So probably the biggest one there is limit orders, because that's like part of our new like advanced swap queue. So we have a new swap queue manager. The old swap queue manager was, some pretty old code that we had in there that added like stuff like streaming swaps, but we wanted to make it even more powerful. So we added in limit orders on top of THORChain. So I guess just a quick description of what that is and how it works is it's not really a traditional order book like how you'd think of an order book on a centralized exchange where you have like a pair of like Rune and USD or Bitcoin USD or something. This is all on top of the AMM framework. So everything fits within the AMM. So you could put in an order for any random pair. Let's say like Dogecoin AVAX, like something that nobody is really like trading. There's no order book for that exists anywhere on any centralized exchange. But you can put in a limit order on THORChain for that. And because we have liquidity in the pools, whenever your swap will get filled because of the price, you get filled, and it just goes through the pools like a regular swap. So your liquidity just sits outside the pool, and then if the price is adjust enough to fill your swap, then you just get your coins out. So we think this will be it's a great feature for just like regular traders, obviously. But then I think where the big unlock comes from is ARBs, where ARBs will probably be using this feature to create better pricing on the network, because they'll be able to kind of mirror orders on other exchanges and other marketplaces, right? So instead of reacting to price changes like they do now, they'll be able to just have orders out that they can already ARB. And then once we activate this other thing called rapid swaps, which we'll probably do before the end of this year, we'll be able to complete long streaming swaps that might take a couple hours at this point into a single block or just very few blocks just by just running through them super fast with this consuming limit order liquidity and all that. So limit orders are just like a pretty cool thing and I like it because it fits on top of the AMM framework and isn't like just an order book, because order books are we can go into that a little bit later, but they got their own like liquidity problems when you start dealing with an order book.
Yeah, of course. So to like super noob friendly, that whole thing. So when the price moves in a pool, obviously, let's just say the price moves somewhere else and then the pool is still at the same price. The way to change the price in the pool is you just trade into the pool, you arbitrage across that. You get paid because, again, you're buying at a different price that you could get on Binance, for example. And then that just pushes the price down to where it's market price. And so if I were to kind of describe limit orders in that from the arbitrage standpoint, at least, then that's kind of like pre-arbing in. Like you just say, all right, I will do this at these prices. And then instead of just being like, oh, wait, it changed, let me go do it really quick, it just auto-fills instead. Is that kind of it, or am I missing something?
Yeah, exactly. So like right now, if you're doing so we have this thing called streaming swaps, which if anyone doesn't know, it's like, all right, let's say you have a really big trade you want to fill.
Streaming swap before, yeah. So
and it's like So we break up your really big trades into really small trades and then execute it like once every block. which it can take a long time if there's shallow liquidity in those pools, which if you've done it on like, some pretty shallow pools and a big size, it's going to take a while. But with streaming swap, so that's what a streaming swap is. And every block an ARB comes in and says, oh, I can make a little bit of profit by arbing the pool back. So instead of the really big slip, we kind of like spread the liquidity out over time. But what limit orders does is say like, all right, well, you can just place a limit, and then there's this like preset liquidity in there, and then we can start running through that even faster. So you can actually like get your fill at a really good price really quickly rather than having to wait the entire time. So we solved the liquidity problem by stretching across the time dimension, but now we're trying to compress the time dimension as well and make it both fast and cheap.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that seems like it could be a pretty big efficiency boost for that. Does it kind of replace a traditional order book in terms of functionality, or would there still be some cases where you would want a more traditional order book?
Well, there is going to be an order book on Rujira, so like on the app layer of THORChain, and I mean, it's a good question actually. I think that there is uses for order books, and I think they make sense when you have like a more traditional like system like a centralized exchange or something like that. Order books are really capital efficient because you don't need liquidity just sitting there. You just have a market maker that fills orders, places orders, and does all this. But in an AMM, you need a lot of passive liquidity just sitting there doing nothing, which isn't great for capital efficiency, but is really great for always on liquidity. Because we saw this back in like October during that big flash crash that happened, I think October 10th or somewhere around there, where all the market makers just pulled their liquidity. And what happened to the order books? Like some people came in with some really big sell orders from liquidations or whatever happened, and there's no liquidity to cushion the fall. People like didn't really have any liquidity to trade on. We saw Atom went to like $0 on Binance. Like it's wild. That's what happens when you have an order book. It's very, your liquidity is constrained by the people who make the market, where like this kind of system is more robust because it still relies on the automatic market maker and the always on market. It'll always give you a price for the assets that you have, but it isn't constrained by that. Like I think it's like it is a central point of failure for the market, because it's like if you don't have someone making that market, like you can flash crash to zero or any number. It's much less robust market, but it's way more capital efficient. So that's why like everybody does an order book in like the centralized exchange world.
Yeah, and so I guess that it's kind of like it works because someone's there making the markets, and then if someone's not there, kaboom.
Yeah, exactly. The automatic market maker is just like, all right, here's an open market. Anyone gets the opportunity. You can arb it. And yeah, prices can get out of whack. But whenever prices are weird on the order book, on the AMM, that's just an opportunity for you or anybody else to just go and make a big trade and make a big stack by doing that. Like you see the prices are off by a couple percent, or, ARBs do it for way less than that. But I'm saying like if there's a big price dislocation on like a THORChain or a Uniswap or something like that, that's just an opportunity for anybody to come in and do something there. Well, it's super thin order book, like it gets pretty sketchy when you get to certain prices.
Yeah, and that was one of the interesting things that happened over the last few weeks, where it was the Dash pool and the Maya protocol got a massive amount of volume, and one of the swaps I heard was even bigger than the pool itself. And so with all of that, it caused a UTXO management issue that was discovered. It affects all UTXO chains, but they just discovered it, and then it just crashed the pool. So the Dash pool was down for like a few days at least, if not a week. And so I kept seeing the price on the pool is like not the real price. And then as soon as that started resumed again, all of a sudden, all the ARB trade just flowed right back in, and it reset. And it was kind of fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I do love that streaming swaps gives you the ability to do a trade that's bigger than the pool itself, which is something you also can't do on an order book. Like you can do a DCA type order, but I think anyone would be pretty sketched out about getting like wicked up super high on a big trade that they're trying to do, just because that's an opportunity for the market maker to just make a ton of profit, right? Where it's like on an AMM, I think there's a lot more opportunity to just like, I don't know, have it more like egalitarian, like anyone can kind of arb that, which is of course true on an order book too. But I think it's just a little more robust in that sense.
Yeah, and that was kind of like wild because you had massive amounts of volume going through Zcash and Maya's pools, but I mean Zcash and Dash's pools on Maya, but the Dash pool had 10% of the 10% of the total liquidity of the Zcash pool, but the same volume. So that was interesting to see that people could still get through. So even though it was similar volumes and one pool was like 10, the Dash pool was producing more total fees for the network than the Zcash pool, which was very interesting to watch. You know,
it was probably it's an amazing time to trade on DEXes, like during those like crazy liquidity moments, because there's always like an opportunity to be had there. Like I'm sure if you tried to do those trades on centralized exchanges, you wouldn't get filled. Like everything was down. Like, you know, THORChain and Maya were going like nothing happened. Obviously, unless there's a bug, then that there's a UTXO bug or something like that, like you mentioned. But like, you know, give it like over time that all smooths out, and it's just like always on trading even during like these crazy moments, and that's where like the biggest opportunities definitely come.
Yeah, for sure. It's so let's hit on the Memoless swaps. And so just as background of this, that is something that's been a very personal, something that I am like super excited about, because the whole old school, you know, THORChain ecosystem, the bane of my existence was connect a wallet, because a lot of people in like the more EVM style world, the MetaMask world or whatever, are very familiar with that. That's fine. But then when you go to the Dino coin world, the UTXO style world, there was just no overlap. And so then I had to deal with key store wallets and stuff like that. And then there's definite limits as far as like flexibility of this. Like you can't just send to a QR code and then it just works. And so, and also, as I understand, like Monero was very difficult to integrate because the addresses are just so damn long. It's to get all that in there. So, yeah, might as well go into Memoless and how it works.
Yeah, sure. So Memoless, so I guess like for some context, when you send funds to THORChain, you send it with a memo. And like on Bitcoin, that's an op return. On a Cosmos chain, there's just a memo field. Every chain kind of does it differently. On like a ERC20, you just call it in the contract call. It's just a field in there. There's different ways we do it for every single chain, but not every wallet obviously supports even doing that. Like Ledger wallet doesn't support for XRP and for Tron, and there's like every wallet has their own quirks, and they don't always support everything for every chain. So what Memoless does is it creates a system where you can pre-register your intent, and like the whole idea here is, and also like a caveat, I talk about this stuff from like the infrastructure side, not so much as like the front end side. So I'll try and connect all this as well. Where like, so Memoless transactions is a way for like your interface to say, all right, this user wants to do this swap. We're going to register the memo before they send the money. So you say like, okay, well, this user wants to swap Bitcoin to USDT. They're trying to sell their Bitcoin. And so they don't want to connect their wallet. Like they want to just send their funds because they're using like Electrum wallet or like, you know, they're some OG like wallet or something like that. Something that doesn't have like built-in swaps. Like they're not using a trust wallet or something, or they don't want to connect their ledger or whatever.
Paper wallet.
I don't know how you do that, but yes, yes, you're putting your UTXOs to the carrier pigeon network, sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah. So it's essentially a system where you can pre-register your intent and you get this reference ID. So it gives you like a string out. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is like your order number. Like, you know, you go to a burger shop and you get your order number, and when they call your name, that's how you identify that. All right, this is like my order. I can check the memo that was registered and say like, okay, yeah, that's my memo. This is my intent for my swap. And then what you can do is there's two ways that you can execute the Memoless swap. The first thing is you can just put that reference ID in the memo, so you can just reference the memo, but in a really short way. So that's good for like a Monero where there's a really low byte count, or if you're trying to do something like complicated on Bitcoin, which has an 80 byte like limit for the op return, unless you know, Core V30 gets fully adopted.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole. Holy crap.
Yeah. But anyway, there's obviously like limits on some of these chains and like how much you can put in the memos, and just arbitrary depending on the chain. So that's the one way where you can just say like, all right, reference my memo 12345, and it just does it. So like if you're trying to do something crazy, like do some kind of smart contract call with a custom refund address on Bitcoin, and like, I don't know, something that takes a lot of bytes to tell THORChain what it is you want it to do, you're going to want to use a memoless transaction, but you can still use a memo, but just with that reference ID. So that's one interesting thing. And obviously that opens up Monero, but there's other reasons why Monero is difficult, but that's just like, I guess, one of them. But yeah, so that's one thing. The second thing is you can encode that memo into the last byte, the last digits of the amount that you send. So if you're sending Bitcoin to THORChain, like you want to send 1 Bitcoin and your reference ID is 12345, you can send that 1 Bitcoin. So you pre-register, you get your reference ID is 12345. You then send in 1.000122345 Bitcoin to THORChain, and it knows like, okay, the last digits are 12345. I'm going to execute this with the memo that's registered for 12345. So basically what that means is you can do a swap with any wallet, no matter if there's any kind of support or not. You just need a interface that does memoless transactions. They'll probably have different names for this, like QR. Like it'll be really simple. Like there's just a QR code, and it'll say, all right, send exactly this number of sats to this address on the Bitcoin chain, and that's it. So I know they've already done this on like the swap.thorchain.org, and I think a couple other interfaces are already doing it, like DEX. But it's definitely like one of those features that is, I think it's not a perfect feature, because obviously like there are like points of failure where you can, if you send the wrong amount, like you're not going to get you're not referencing the right thing. Like THORChain's not going to know if you send 123333, like it's not going to know that you actually meant to do 12345. So
yeah,
that's
what's the fallback for that?
Yeah.
Does it just spit it back out to where the address it came from? Does it just eat the money and keep it, or what?
Yeah, well, it depends on if there's already, if you're sending it to someone else's registration, then it doesn't know how to handle that. So it would then execute that person's memo if there's a use left. So there's only like one use per reference.
Okay.
But like, let's say someone just registered that other number and didn't use it, then it's gonna, whatever their intent is, it just assumes that it's going to that person. So it's like, you want to be careful with the amounts that you're sending. Make sure you're sending the right amounts. Obviously, like test it first and do all that.
Yeah. So,
but you get a refund if it's not registered. But okay, so if it's not something you want to do with it.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense, because, and I have to admit, like, I wish that this was a super edge case, but it's not, because I'm sure most people will be familiar, even if not by name, by BIP21, which is basically the QR code protocol or whatever. If you scan a QR code, it doesn't just say address. It says address and amount equals. So you can grab the amount too. And I have seen, like, it's like the other side of the bell curve now, where I've seen a decreasing number of services and things and wallets that support BIP21, where now a lot of times I will scan a QR code, or I will have to like manually enter an amount on my phone for some of these things, and I have to yell at them and say, like, this has been around since 2012. You need to put this in, and then they do it in 2 seconds and it works. But like, I guess the kind of context for how this could be interesting is I've been looking at trying to get THORChain and Maya, etc., all these kinds of swaps into like a mono coin wallet, right? A 1 coin wallet, so that, let's just say you have Selene wallet with the Bitcoin Cash folks that I know, and they want you to be able to send Litecoin in there, and it ends up as Bitcoin Cash and uses DEX rails, in this case THORChain. Before Memoless, you couldn't just do that. You couldn't just send to the wallet, because the wallet have to connect and all this stuff. It just wouldn't work out. But now it sounds like, as long as they support BIP21 and can actually get the amount, that should be doable.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel you with the BIP21 stuff. I was testing this because I made an API for Memoless, so that way I just wanted to get something out ASAP, so that way like the swap.thorchain.org could use it, and DEX is using it, and some other people. And I did all that like amount encoding stuff, and then I tried it with Trust Wallet, and I don't think it worked with the amounts, unfortunately. I don't think they support the like it works with the chain selection, but the amounts don't work. So it definitely depends on the wallet that you're using. But yeah. And to be clear, like I always like I understand that this probably isn't the I quote unquote ideal like memoless transaction where like ideally all you want is to have like an address and you send it to that address. But and I do want to push for that in the future, but it creates a lot of complexity on THORChain for like a whole number of reasons, like scanning a bunch of different addresses. Like it creates a lot of scalability concerns. It makes our churning much more complicated where we have to like consolidate all of our coins into new vaults, which we do very often. Other networks don't really do that. Like scanning, like there's a lot of different scenarios where it makes it very difficult, and it creates a lot of edge cases per chain as well. So I think I do want us to get there eventually, but like right now it's going to be just you have to send the proper amount. But in the future, especially for UTXOs, because I think that this feature is mostly for UTXO chains. It's not like if you have an Ethereum wallet, you're probably just going to connect it to the site that you're using. Like I think most people are probably just going to do that. And yeah, so I would like to see a future where we just have like a full memoless integration where it's just like, okay, you just here's a wallet address and just send it here. Whatever you send here, we're just gonna swap it or whatever. That'd be a much better solution. But like right now, this is the scalable solution that we have right now and can actually get out there. So
yeah, I mean it seems like it solves kind of most problems there. You can just register that, use it, and you know people can't get their heads around BIP21. I mean I don't know what to do about it, but
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. Yeah, so there's those two features. Anything else got rolled out recently?
Let's see. I mean, we're always doing a ton of stuff. I always put out these newsletters, but nothing is popping to the front of my mind. Well, we added XRP and Tron over the past like 6 months or so. So XRP was probably like middle of May, probably just like right after we released TCY, and then we added Tron. I want to say early October, late September, or somewhere around there. So we've been adding some new chains, and we have a couple of new chains like on deck, ready to go. Just need like some testing and a little bit of a TLC, but all the code's ready to go. So yeah, we've been excited about those two chains because we've gotten a bunch of feedback from all of our integrations and the people that we work with pretty closely at like Ledger and Trust Wallet. Tron does a ton of volume, even more so than Solana, honestly. Crazy. So yeah, it is pretty crazy. So we have TRX and USDT on Tron, and then we have just XRP on XRP Ledger. So we're in the weeds, adding some like some of the most economically significant new chains because that's really what drives volume.
Yeah, what's the volume been like on those? I heard at least Patriot Sounds, and you know that guy. He's been talking a lot about the XRP volume during certain eras and stuff. So yeah, it's been doing great on those too.
Yeah, I mean Tron, it's pretty new, so we haven't gotten any uptake from the SwapKit guys yet, who kind of gate most of the integrations. So like we haven't really gotten that volume through like Trust Wallet or anything, which is like one of the biggest. I mean, it is the biggest like retail hot wallet. So we're waiting on that a little bit for a little bit more uptake on the Tron side. It's not bad or anything. It's just obviously these things do take time to grow. XRP is doing pretty good. Like it's like in the last 24 hours, it does like almost 300K in volume off of 750K depth. Which isn't like incredible, but it isn't terrible either. So it's all about integrations and where you are. We're not in any like XRP specific front ends or anything like that. So there's definitely like more work to be done there, and it'll just take more time to grow. But it's been a pretty successful integration, I think. I think it's it wouldn't be right to just kind of ignore it completely. And it does add like a lot of value for them as well, I think.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So the ones on the roadmap are Solana, and what was the other one?
Yeah, so Solana is like ready to go. It just needs testing on StageNet. So our StageNet is like our staging environment where we run all the mainnet code. We run real chains because like we tried to do this in the past with test nets, and it was just horrible, not scalable, and yeah, we needed like a place with real funds to test it. So we're getting a new team spun up to really accelerate the shipping of new chains. So they're going to be, once they get spun up, we'll have Solana. And the goal for Solana is before the end of this year, which I think we'll be able to accomplish without too much of an issue. Other than that, we have Zcash, which I know is on Maya already, and those guys are awesome for creating a MR to add it to THORChain. I mean, Zcash has obviously just been getting a lot of attention, and something that would be great for THORChain, especially just because like it's been battle tested on Maya already. Like they're adding shielded transactions as well, which is just awesome. And I know that the team is working on Ton, the Telegram Open Network, which will make use of our EDDSA support, which we had to add to do Solana, which is kind of why it took so long, is just getting EDDSA up on the chain. And then there's other chains, which we will probably add afterwards, things like Arbitrum, probably some more ETH L2s, maybe Polygon. Like anything that's seeing significant volume in the cross-chain space, I think worth an add. Although I do want to say like there's diminishing returns like as you go down the list. Zcash has just been doing incredible for the past like couple of months, and is even higher than the Bitcoin volume on like near intense, for example. So yeah, like there's obviously a lot of value in adding like the hot things, but I mean, I've wanted to see Zcash on here for a while, and I think that'll be very nice. But like as you get further and further down the list, like once you get out of like the top like 10, 15 chains, like there's like pretty significantly diminishing returns on adding it, and there's like exponential increase in like workload and just like things that can go wrong. And like if any one of these chains is paused, that kind of pauses churn for a while, like, you know what I mean? So the operational overhead just increases, which diminishes the returns of like adding the new chains. But it makes sense to just continue to monitor like the whole space and just like see where the value is, where people want to trade, where people want to provide liquidity, that type of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's on like those like 4 are the biggest on our radar right now.
Nice. Yeah, and I have to take partial credit for the whole Zcash thing. You could see a post in the Zcash forum like a couple of years ago where it said you absolutely should aggressively pursue the Maya protocol. And I, Alux, he kind of sort of jokingly says he only adds the chains that I tell him to add. Obviously, it's not 100% true, but Zcash was an interesting case in particular because it definitely was not one of the top volume darlings at all, but was kind of that product market fit with the DEX, where a lot of people don't want to use centralized rails to get like hardcore privacy stuff, but also just like anticipating future volume, right? And so that's kind of a, that's always tricky because you could just get something like, I do feel sorry for the Maya folks for like adding like Radix, and then the founder unfortunately passed away, and I'm sure that's done a number on volume, and then doing like Kujira, which then had, did what Kujira did, and then it turned out well, but at the same time, it's a lot of like, stuff on that. On the sort of more negative side, maybe, what is is there any kind of like delisting roadmap for chains? Like, is there any kind of, first of all, other than Terra Luna, as far as I'm aware, have you guys actually removed any chains from THORChain?
Yeah, we've had to remove Binance Beacon Chain because they decommissioned Binance Beacon Chain. So that's been one that I think those are the only 2 chains we ever had to Ragnarok. And I remember when we did that, it's just an operational pain. It's just like a ton of work, like testing, and it's like not for any benefit either. It's just like, all right, now we just got to remove this thing. So that wasn't amazing. It just is what it is, because they decommissioned their Beacon network, which was a Cosmos-based chain, in favor of their Binance Smart Chain, like their EVM chain. Which is fine. So that code does exist, and we have used it in the past like 2 years. I think I want to say last January we used it for the BNB chain decommission. So it does exist, and they can do that. So it shouldn't be too big of a deal to remove a chain. It's just like, there's always something like when we're dealing with a big complex code base, there's always these edge cases and things that happen, and it's just cleanup and figuring out like how to fix that type stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So
far it just seems like Ragnarok has been just for the chains that have kind of died, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an argument like we could get rid of chains on, like, if we were to get rid of any chain on THORChain, it would probably be Atom, just because it does very low volume and it's low liquidity. And I think there isn't just much activity there. But at the same time, it's like there really isn't that much overhead to upkeep it either. If it was like a super, if like we put Solana in and it did 0 volume, like, yeah, it probably doesn't yeah, it probably wouldn't be worth it, just because how expensive it's going to be to run those nodes. And or some people will probably run their own nodes, and other people will use RPCs to scan those chains, and it's very expensive. So like, if that did as low volume as Atom, then we should probably just take it off. But everything else that does low volume isn't really like high overhead or upkeep or anything like that. So I don't think there's really much argument to like remove stuff. And it hasn't been, because if something is like a big problem, like maintenance wise or whatever, then yeah, we'd probably want to do that. But at this point, there's really not been nothing that's just like, okay, yeah, we need to do this right now.
Yeah. So now on the listing strategy. So obviously seems, pretty clear, which makes absolute sense, trying to get things that will actually get volume, of course.
Yeah.
And then it seems like the sort of unspoken, at least in the early days, Maya protocol roadmap for integrations was whatever THORChain won't take, we'll take kind of thing. And now we're starting to see some sort of like reverse, like mirroring of like Zcash, which was on Maya, and then Arbitrum as well. And so is there any specific like rhyme or reason? Is there a coordination at all between like, okay, what are you guys adding? Oh, we should have this as well. Or now we won't have that. Or like, do you guys coordinate when planning which one should get which, or which one should be on both, etc., those kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say there's so much explicit coordination, but it's like, if we feel like, because I very much just focus on THORChain and just let Maya do their thing, and I try and support them where I can. Alex is a friend, and he also helps out THORChain a lot too. So it's like we need just in terms of helping ship out TCUI and just being there with devs and resources when needed. So it's like it's just a mutual relationship like that. But at the same time, like, there's no point in ignoring something for THORChain that would, in my opinion, that would be like a benefit. If it would be a benefit to our chain, then there's no reason not to add it to THORChain. So it's like, if you're a business, you wouldn't not do something because some other business did it, right? Especially if it's going to be successful and like drive volume and drive your KPIs, then that's like, any serious business would not, just say like, oh yeah, well, this other company is very friendly to us. And so yeah, I think that's one thing. But at the same time, we obviously like greatly respect their team and are not trying to harm their network or anything like that. But you can only take that so far, where it's like, there is like obvious synergy between the two. But there's nothing like super coordinated about it. It's just like, all right, well, we need to add Zcash. So it's like, we can either just let Maya handle it forever, or, I don't think there's any benefit to just saying like, well, they're just going to do it and we're just not going to do it because they are.
Yeah.
Because like our competitors that are outside of just the two of us are not being like, oh yeah, THORChain has this, we should not add it. You know what I mean? So it's like, we're just handicapping ourselves if we decide to do that. So I mean, my goal is just make THORChain as strong as possible and to give it as many features and make it as useful and as much of like a freedom tool as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. And probably the roadmap thing is more of almost like a Maya question of like, which chains are they going to target, to be a differentiating factor there. But like on the Maya thing, and I've heard mention again, I listen into some of these spaces and stuff like that, and there's a lot of discussion about kind of like, I think some of this might have been from JP as well, and JP also has been on this channel before, but he's a little bit of a wild card. So like, that's why I always have to check, did he just say some cool idea, or did he say something that's a literal roadmap item? And so about kind of feature mirroring across THORChain and Maya, or like traditionally it's been like THORChain does stuff and then Maya later comes on and says, oh yeah, we're going to add this in as long as it's not THORFi, kind of like they come later.
Yeah.
Whereas I heard some rumor or something about like simultaneous deployment or some kind of aligning on features or anything like that. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, with JP, it's always hard to tell what's a roadmap item and what is just musings of something. So that, like, I always take whatever he says with a grain of salt. And just so the one thing that we have discussed, so at a Rugi offsite back in September, so like 3 months ago, I want to say, I don't think any progress has been made on this yet. But one interesting thing, and this is a real synergy for Maya and THORChain, would be exporting secured assets via IBC to THORChain. So let's say Maya has Dash, or which it does, right? So you can take that secured Dash, so you wrap it basically on Maya, and then you beam it to THORChain via IBC, and then you can use it on Rujira, or you can trade it synthetically on THORChain. I guess it would really be a Rujira thing, so this is more of a Rujira like topic. But I think that's interesting. Although, like, I don't see why not just add the chains directly at that point to THORChain. Like, I don't know. JP has a lot of interesting ideas, but they take a lot of dev work and time to actually accomplish these things, and whether they're actually worth it or not is a big issue. So it's like I'm very just focused on THORChain, and obviously I want Maya to succeed as well, but like not for our own detriment. There's no point in doing that. So nothing that I've heard other than that, but we work closely with Alux, so it's like, we're going to continue to support him, and of course, as he supports us too.
Yeah. And so I guess,
also one thing that's kind of related, I guess real quick on the JP stuff about Monero, because I think that's something that people would really be interested in kind of hearing my perspective on, just understanding how like THORChain and THORChain dev works. There's a couple of things behind this. So first off, JP and like his team of devs like made this fork of THORChain a while ago. I think it was called Black Protocol, and they tried to do an integration of Monero, and they successfully did it, I believe, using Monero multisig, and then some Monero devs, probably Luke Parker and just Kayaba and Sarai. They were like, and the thing is, this is all like things that I've heard and seen. This is like, so I'm not trying to like throw shade or say that this is true or not true or whatever. Yeah. But like Monero devs were like, hey, this is insecure. You shouldn't use the multisig, for this. It's not secure enough. So they kind of abandoned that, and I think that so obviously like there's some push to like get Monero onto THORChain, which I think would actually be like I think it'd be good to have THORChain on Monero. It's just it's all technical stuff right now, so it's like I know that there's the FCMP++ stuff. I don't really know that much about like how Monero works and functions. I know that they are changing a lot of things with that upgrade, so maybe it doesn't make sense to do it at this very moment. But I know that they are working, like JP's team is working with Silence Labs, who will be trying to work on like TSS for this, or whether we just use like Luke's TSS or something. I don't really know that much about like the technicals of how we need to get Monero up. I know that is by far would be the most complicated thing that we were to add to the network. And the thing is, like, none of us are like Monero experts. So it's like, someone like him is a Monero expert and really understands that well. He's super pedantic, don't get me wrong, but like he's obviously a Monero expert and like really understands that stuff. But he's also like not shipped Monero on Sarai. So I would like to see it on THORChain. Along with Zcash, and because I think that's like, there's no point in keeping THORChain in this middle ground of just like, all right, well, I think it's important to keep THORChain like completely transparent and like not really not obfuscating like where we're sending funds to or not, and obviously like keeping THORChain like censorship free and stuff. But it's kind of tough to be in that middle ground where you're just kind of getting eaten at both ends from like more centralized versions of the same thing, but then also like not really going into the privacy stuff as well. So like Zcash, Monero, I think are part of that. So I would definitely like to see them on. What timeline that is, I really have no idea. I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard any updates since JP tried to make that push, but you kind of know how it goes with him. So I'm hoping we see it sometime. I don't know. Maybe we'll see it in the first half of next year. Maybe not. I don't know if you know when this FCMP++ upgrade is, but I would assume that it would make sense to do it after that, or maybe I don't know if they can prepare anything or like already so that way we can be ready before. But
from my understanding, it's on testnet right now, so it's soon. Again, the famous last words in crypto,
Yeah.
of course, but like,
Yeah.
it's relatively soon. And based on my understanding, it is a radical departure from the way Monero used to work. So yeah, I think it would probably make sense. To, the entire way it works with ring signatures is just going to be gone. So probably more, Zcash esque, I guess, as far as things are going. So I would if I were making business decisions, I would probably wait for that, but like start looking into what won't change until then, and start doing that. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, so our team hasn't been involved in that at all. It's just like it's kind of up in the air at this point because I think that there's like I haven't heard from JP or anyone else on the team about like Monero integration, so I don't have any like real update on it. But I think that like I think it would be good to have it on THORChain. Obviously, like there's just a lot of interest in Monero in general, and I think that it kind of has a similar ethos to THORChain in a lot of ways. So I think I would like to see it, and I'd like us to get it out there. So hopefully we see it next year.
Yeah, that would be cool. So really quick, do you want to explain rapid swaps? I know kind of mentioned that.
Oh yeah, so rapid swaps are it's like completing a streaming swap in like streaming multiple times in one block. So instead of just streaming once every block, you could stream like 10 times in a block. So you have an ARB going the other way, you going one way, and then instead of waiting 10 blocks for that, you just wait one because you just run through them real quick. So that's basically what rapid swaps are. Is just completing your streaming swap in one block rather than 100 or if you have a really big trade, thousands of blocks.
Yeah. How does that exactly work kind of at a high level? Because my understanding is when you break it up, the slippage isn't a thing, but breaking it up in one block doesn't seem like breaking it up to me. So just is
Yeah, so what we do is we actually run the end of the block multiple times. Like we just kind of repeat the end of the block in the functions that it does. So what the end of the block does is say, all right, if there's another streaming swap that needs to happen, let's do it now. So you have you're breaking it up into multiple trades but you're just executing it in the same block. So you're saying like, okay, I'm going to execute this part of the trade, and now that's the end of this end block. And now we're going to just try it again, and we're going to do it again. But then you have someone on the other end doing the trade in the opposite direction, arbing you. So that's kind of how it works. You are breaking it up. It's just always it's happening in the same block, but it's happening multiple times. So you're just kind of looping that breakup process, and you're just condensing it into a shorter time span.
And so that allows the opposite side ARB to come in and have that in the same block as well. What's the block time again?
It's 6 seconds. We have a PR to open to drop it down to 2 seconds, although that's been kind of pushed back. It is one of the more risky things that we could do because like a lot of features, we have like these gates where we can kind of shut it off if something is going wrong. So that way it's like if there's some kind of critical issue, we can say like, all right, we need to stop the rollout of this. 2 second block times is one of those things that's just like, you can't really just gate it like that just because of the way that chains work. So it's like one of the more risky things to do because if something goes wrong with that upgrade, then it's like we're in not so great of a state. So we want to make sure if we end up doing that, which I'm still not sure whether there's consensus on whether we're actually going to go to 2 seconds or not. We want to make sure that we at least chip our roadmap out first before we do that. So that way, like, because if we have to like play cleanup after chipping 2 second blocks and it affects some downstream dependency of something else, like, I don't know, like there's a lot of things that could go wrong with the 2 second block upgrade. That's just like more risky than chipping like the advanced swap queue. We can toggle on and off. And if there's a bug in it, then we can just switch it off and go back to the old swap logic for now. Yeah. So it's less risky shipping that than like a 2 second block time. So right now we're at 6 seconds.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. So Rujira, right? That's upcoming still, right?
Yep. Yeah, so they've shipped out some products and they're still shipping out stuff. So I think they're live with they have order books online, so that's just like that is a traditional order book, but it also virtualizes liquidity from the base layer. So it creates virtual orders from the AMM onto their order book. So it kind of consumes both liquidity. So they have like their own market maker that does orders on the order book, and they also have perps, which I think is like pretty basic. Like it's not like full degen leverage right now, but yeah, they're shipping out perps, which I think I'm pretty sure that's live, just with fairly low leverage, like available. And then they're doing well, I'm most excited for like lending and being able to borrow against your Bitcoin. I'm not sure why they didn't prioritize that first, because I think that's easily going to be their biggest feature in terms of like, you know, like everything, like revenue, usage, and everything else. But like, I'm still looking forward to it. I think that's one of their next things that they're shipping out. So basically, I think they're calling it credit accounts, where you just like have Bitcoin in your account, and then you can just borrow against that and just do whatever with it. And then they have like a liquidations market that goes along with that and all that. So
yeah, so unlike the kind of THORFi features, where basically all those were built on top of the L1 like pools themselves, so that, you know, liquidity providers were the ones kind of, you know, fielding all the risk. This would be individual people would be able to engage in all this, where a person would put their Bitcoin up and lend it out, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is all using secured assets, not synthetic assets or derived assets, which is basically the cause of all the THORFi stuff. Secured assets are secured one-to-one by the L1 asset in our vaults. So they're always one-to-one backed, which was the issue with the other kinds of assets. So any kind of leverage games they play there are entirely contained to their own contracts. You know, just like any contract on Ethereum would just use like, you know, whatever, like wrap Bitcoin or whatever, and there's no risk to the actual like underlying security of like the WBTC company. So yeah.
And so just like really briefly, what is sort of the tie-in to THORChain from Ruggiero? I'm sure you would use the same infrastructure, like nodes and things like that, and I'd assume the same chain, right, or different chain?
Yeah, so they run on THORChain. That's where their infra is, and they use THORChain as infra for their assets that they use. So I guess to clarify that, you can deposit like Bitcoin into your Rugi account, which is just your THORChain account, right? You get a Thor address as part of that, and then you have your secured Bitcoin, and then you can use that to trade perps, to borrow against it, DCA into other assets. There's like index tokens, all that. So it's just like it's strictly like on top of THORChain, where you can just like do all of these different actions. It's just smart contracts on THORChain. So it's just like we issue out assets that they use, and then they pay us rent essentially for doing that. So they pay 50% of their income when they're not paying fees towards like base layer swap fees or whatever. So it's supposed to be an income generator for us, but it also is like adds a lot of functionality to the chain itself by using like our new Cosmosm smart contracts.
Yeah, with very, I guess, sequestered risk, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Now,
no risk to the base chain itself.
Yeah, so that's kind of where, you know, to bring up the ghost of JP again on this stuff. Another thing I heard, a rumor or something, was something about both Maya and THORChain sort of sharing Ruggiero or something, or Ruggiero would also be on Maya or something like that. Do you know what that's about?
I can't say I totally understand it. I think it is related to that like beaming over of assets, as I talked about before. Although I don't really know much more about how they plan to accomplish that or what they plan to do with that. So yeah, I can't say I know that much.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to be fair, there's so much going on that you know, it's hard to keep up with every last little thing. So first of all, are there any big other future features that I missed?
That's our roadmap right now. I think one thing that we really want to look at soon is dynamic fees. So I think it makes sense to have, like right now we charge a flat fee for basically every swap, where it's like we're charging 5 basis points or 15 basis points or whatever. And we're running this fee experiment to kind of see where the optimal point is. But I think that the real answer is in having a dynamic fee that adjusts itself based on the market conditions. So no solid answer on how this will be accomplished yet. We could do it based on the volume. We could do it based on like an Oracle price that we're checking against to see like how good our execution is. But I really kind of want to optimize the market share versus the revenue, because it's like
Mm-hmm.
you can just crank the fees all the way down, but then we're making no money for the chain, which
Yeah,
we
of
need
course.
to pay a bunch of people, obviously. So and
Yeah.
like we need to reward people for being involved. So like that's just kind of the balance, and that's one of the things we want to look at next. So that's one of the major things. And yeah, we just need to ship out like the current roadmap right now. So like rapid swaps soon, new chains is like some of the biggest. Like the next on the docket, I think, right after rapid swaps is like new chains, and then
Yeah. So now we're kind of like backing into the whole near intense kind of thing, right? Where, it's had a lot of kind of vibes, has a lot of like success these days and a lot of comparisons, a lot of, some doom and gloom people being like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the new thing. Nothing else can compete, whatever. It seems like now our mutual friend Jima from SwapKit, great dude. He obviously is I'm like a tourist in cross chain land, right? I mean, I've been a bunch of times, but I don't live there, right? He kind of mentioned about like the generations of DEXs, that atomic peer-to-peer swaps was generation 1, AMM was version 2, concentrated liquidity generated 3, and then intense is gen 4. So he kind of broke down the four, and he didn't really elaborate because he's a busy man, but the four kind of generations of DEXs. So do you want to break down kind of like the generations like that from just a very high level thing, as far as like, the trade-offs of like atomic DEXs, which, because we have this is, very relevant today, because a lot of the space is very fragmented across generations of DEXs, and in terms of even understanding, like for example, the Monero community is still hyping up atomic EVM swaps, like Ethereum swaps and stuff.
Yeah.
And so,
right.
and the fact that you giggle is like, I mean, it's like fair, but like for me, I understand that there's a little bit of a difference, but like a lot of the space is like, well, we have a DEX. It's like, why do we need THORChain? Because we got a DEX. It's like, it's not the same thing. So anyway, all that blabber to just say, you want to kind of go through the chronicle of DEX?
Let's go into it. So first is atomic swaps, where atomic swaps are basically pure peer-to-peer. Like you say, I have this much Monero, I want this much USDT, and you basically enter into a contract with somebody and do like the swap. The reason why it's called atomic swaps is because it happens atomically, meaning like at the same time you exchange one for the other. There's like some kind of escrow thing in the middle, I believe,
with the money, the suitcase with the material. You meet in the middle. Boom.
Yes, exactly. And then you swap hands at the same time, and then bam, your swap happened. Obviously it's not very liquid because you're dealing peer to peer. There's high spreads because of that. There isn't really like a lot. There's no infrastructure behind it really. It's very basic, and you're not getting a very good fill. Like it's very low liquidity is what I'm trying to say. So obviously there was a big push to move to AMMs after that, and I mean a lot of that kind of predates like Uniswap and stuff. So you can see like why that exists, and I guess it was also kind of primitive cross-chain architecture because a lot of that just didn't have this AMM infrastructure that kind of came up until THORChain really came along, which still doesn't support every chain and every ecosystem. So THORChain and AMMs are saying like, okay, well, we're going to have a pool. So, I mean, we'll say it as THORChain because THORChain does the cross-chain stuff, which is kind of what we're talking about, I guess, where THORChain has a pool of assets, and the pool is a market maker. It's an AMM automatic market maker. So your counterparty is always the pool itself. So whenever you do a trade, like on an order book, you're either a maker or a taker. THORChain AMMs, you're always a taker. Like the pool is always the maker of the price. And it's just like a place where liquidity is very concentrated because it's just a one big pool of assets. On THORChain, very liquid. So you can swap with very low slippage and always on liquidity. So there's liquidity at any price. So even if prices go to zero or to infinity on like any given asset, there's still a price for that, where like if there's no person on the other side for the atomic, like there's no, you can't trade, like there's no one to trade against.
Yeah. So
but the pool is always on.
So it's kind of like I kind of would like it like the Craigslist type thing where you have to say I want this for this price, and if you don't have a taker, you don't have a taker. And so, and also it's like the trading pairs. Like I have Bitcoin, I want Monero. Someone else, but no one wants to do that. But there's someone will do Litecoin for Monero, or they will do it for a different price. And it's just like all that fragmentation means that realistically, at the end of the day, I'm not getting what I want. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, like imagine there was a bot on Craigslist that will buy your old table at any price and sell your new table and sell you a table at any price. Like it will it's always a buyer of tables and always will be a seller of tables. It's just a trader, like an automated table trader where otherwise you need to be like, oh yeah, I want this one, but imagine the tables are completely fungible.
So you can always just dump your collection of, firewood. You have extra firewood, you want to put it up, you just put it up there, and then there will always be the AMM truck will just drive by and pick up your wood and pay you.
And there's a shared price of the firewood. Like there's always there's a shared price of like, oh man, the firewood price is through the roof. I'm gonna go sell all my firewood to this guy. And if the fire price is really low, it's like, oh shit, and now's the time to buy it all. So there's a shared price and shared liquidity through that, which is like really, really useful. And it's always on. And like we talked about before, it means there's always a price for the asset. You don't need someone to come in and make the market.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I think is the most important part of the AMM. But so there's downside to that too. Like if you're the table guy or you're the firewood guy, you probably have a massive warehouse full of firewood. Like you need so much in order to keep your business going, because you just need to have that supply to always buy and sell. So you need this massive inventory of both dollars and firewood, or Bitcoin and Rune in THORChain's case.
Yeah.
So you need to have this really big TVL, and that creates this own dependency on like how much inventory do we have, and you have all this stable, this unused, like unproductive, and I'm not saying it's all unproductive, but like it's much less capital efficient than like an order book or something where you don't need that liquidity just sitting there. You need that warehouse full of firewood in order to like maintain your business. You just you just need a little bit to buy and sell based on the orders that are coming through.
Yeah, it's so it just makes sense if you have like almost no one is selling firewood in, let's say, like Arizona. So then you probably want to atomic that, because you don't have to there's no real liquidity, there's low volume, you just like someone puts it on. If someone wants to find it on Craigslist, they do it. But in a place like, say, Canada, or I don't know what they're with the emissions, but it's a different story. But like if you want you could have a AMM for firewood, because everyone is always buying and selling, and it just makes sense to have that.
Yeah, but you're gonna need that massive stockpile. Like you can't do it with really low liquidity, because otherwise it's just too much for the market to handle. So which brings me to the intense-based stuff, which I think has its own advantages and disadvantages.
There was you mentioned concentrated liquidity. Is that some sort of as like number 3 between AMM and...
Oh yeah, it is a little bit of a hybrid. So concentrated liquidity means, I'll provide liquidity. So the XYK AMM, which is like, kind of the V1, which is what THORChain is, V2. That's where you have this price curve that provides a price at any point in that curve. So like from 0 to infinity, you have a price for the two assets. For concentrated liquidity, you have these more sophisticated people, like you kind of need a market maker on this AMM, because you need someone to say, I will provide liquidity between $5,000 and $10,000 for Ethereum or something like that. Like you need someone to be a liquidity provider in a certain price range. So it creates this effect where you need less liquidity in order to maintain that market, but there's not a price for every point on the curve. So you need someone to actively manage that, which I think that is kind of this point of inefficiency where it's like, all right, well, it's kind of the worst of both worlds, because you have you still need that idle capital, but at the same time, you need someone to actively manage it, which is kind of where I'm going with the intense-based stuff, and same with order books.
So, apologies, this is a dumb question, but is it possible that with limit orders, you could potentially sort of like replicate a concentrated liquidity kind of thing by having like an AMM pool, but like probably way too small for what you really need for volume, but because there's enough like market makers on standby with limit orders, they can kind of have that effect.
Yeah, I mean that's what it does is essentially. So yeah, it does kind of replicate that same thing, but it doesn't. It means like if you were to just say, oh, this pool is just this V3 style, like where you need the concentrated liquidity, then then you're totally reliant on it. The way we have it set up is that you still have the V2 style liquidity, which is less efficient, but you get a price at any point. But you still have the concentrated liquidity effect of you can have a market maker kind of always be there to set the price as needed.
Yeah. So if we're talking,
yeah,
and understand that like this, like there's different trust trade-offs as we go along this thing. It's not linear. It's not like a linear evolution. It's like all over the place kind of. But so if I were to put it, it's like, V1 was atomic, V2 is AMM, V3 could be like concentrated liquidity. V3.5 is AMM plus limit orders, kind of getting the concentrated liquidity. I don't know. Is that dumb or does that make sense?
I would kind of call it it's kind of concentrated liquidity. It's more of a hybrid between V2 and V3, maybe V2.5.
So you could say 2.5 then.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter. But
yeah. I mean, this is all arbitrary. So then intense base, just broadly, we'll get to near specifically in just a second, but just broadly based intense. Do you mind explaining how that works?
Intense it kind of goes back to the atomic section, but there's maybe more infrastructure in between where you're just saying like, hey, I have 1 Bitcoin. I want $100,000, 100,000 USDT. Like, who's going to give that to me? And so there will be I mean, that's broadly what intents are. And I'm interested in, so I guess we can go into how near intense kind of works and what the differences are between THORChain and near intense. Cause I think, I got some interesting thoughts there, I think.
Yeah, of course.
So near intense, that's basically what it is. So they have this thing called chain abstraction. So they basically have threshold vaults, although their threshold signers are like this set kind of trusted set. It's not like a decentralized set like THORChain does, which is fine. That means you have your own security trade-offs like their foundation. And I think a couple, not solvers, but some trusted folks run their TSS setup. But it's this infrastructure to say like, oh yeah, we're going to secure your Bitcoin on our network. It's going to be like this wrapped BTC or whatever, that it's like their near wrapped BTC. And then you get a user that says like, okay, I want to swap my Bitcoin to Zcash. And then they have a solver who's really a market maker on the other end. Like they have these market makers, like, this Wintermute type like of entity that comes on and says, oh yeah, well, I have, I'll give you this much Zcash for this much Bitcoin. And then the user will say like, okay, yeah, I'll take that trade. And then they go on their merry way. So it kind of cuts out the middleman of the pool where you don't need that price curve. It's much more like the order book, although it's not exactly an order book, where you're just you're interacting directly with the market maker. So it's basically going back to square one with atomic swaps. You just kind of have a more sophisticated actor in the middle there that's just providing liquidity for all these assets. And really, it's like the ARB. The ARB, you're just doing your trade against the ARB instead of the pool. And that's what the difference is between THORChain and Near. THORChain is decentralized liquidity, decentralized custody. Near is decentralized custody, centralized liquidity, where you need someone on the other end to provide that liquidity for your trade. So there's always someone that'll be, it'll be a market maker, right? That's going to say like, I will take the other end of your trade. I will trade you your Zcash for your Bitcoin. And this is the price that I'll do it at. And they have an exchange or their book on their back end and says like, oh yeah, this is where I can make a profit. I'm going to offer them this much and see if they accept. So the reason why they can offer really good, well, not only do they not really have any overhead because all their infrastructure is for free through Near, it's just all subsidized because they have this giant chain with a lot of VC money and they have access to all that. Yeah. They can just get market makers to interact directly with users. But I don't really see I do like the concept that with THORChain, you're always interacting with the protocol, because that means we can keep things very open, like censor resistant, and it means there's always liquidity for any given price at any given moment. Where like with a near or with an intent-based system, you are relying on that counterparty being there to fill the other end of your trade, and it's at whatever price that they will offer it for you. So it's basically peer-to-peer. You're just peer-to-peering with a market maker directly. But somehow it's also no KYC. So I don't understand how that really follows like all these like, laws and things that are about like, hey, you kind of got to know your customer when dealing with that, like Bank Secrecy Act and whatnot. But maybe that's just, obviously no one really cares about that in this day and age. But,
well, I mean,
that is kind of why
things anyway.
Right. Yeah. But that's also like why THORChain exists, is to like be the counter. It's always your counterparty in the middle when you're dealing with a THORChain trade, where it kind of like, it makes it so that way if you're swapping with like, quote unquote, like bad actor or like somebody, you're never swapping directly with them. You're always trading with the protocol, and the protocol is like this like ethereal entity. But like on this other side, you're dealing directly with the user. So I think it's not really, I don't know. I don't like that model as much, and it is more capital efficient. Like they don't need to, because you're just directing with the ARB. So like we have ARBs on the network, and they can just have their ARB just give you a price. And, it's way more efficient.
So kind of like maybe the cynical take for something like THORChain might be that, oh yeah, even though you have this decentralized pool mechanism, you will always have centralized market makers kind of arbing on the edges of it, and then near intents just takes that out, and you're just working directly with them instead of, and that would be maybe the cynical take, of course. But as far as it seems like, or you could have market makers just depositing into a THORChain pool, like, and just being like, I have a liquidity position now. But it sounds like the difference, and again, I will have to just talk with the near folks as well to kind of make sure I understand everything deeply. But I guess my understanding is with THORChain, these market makers who want to, be market makers and make profit from this, etc., they just deposit into a protocol, but anyone can. I can. In fact, I have before, right? Whereas with Near, it's not that plug and play. You don't just go, sure, I'm going to go do this, and you kind of have to set something up a little bit more formalized, and it's not really accessible to everyday people. It's more like, it's just hard. It's a little bit harder to get in, therefore maybe more permissioned. I don't know if it's permissioned, but it's maybe more permissioned.
I mean, I think that's a little bit it, but I think the biggest, I think anyone can be, actually, I'm not sure if anyone can be a market maker, like an intents provider. That may or may not be true. Although a lot of intents protocols, like not talking about Near, but a lot of other intents protocols, there's one solver and it's the team, so it's like, I don't even understand how that can be allowed. Maybe it's just like nobody really cares about that type of thing. But
there's a lot of that too.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where a lot of this is, and I think there are I don't think that all the near solvers are just the team, but I'm sure maybe the team does run some. I have no idea. I know like the Guardian, for example, like they do that where it's just like, all right, yeah, there's like basically one solver that does 90% of the trades, and like the team or close to the team runs it, and somehow that's fine, I guess. Anyway, but the point is that with THORChain, your counterparty, like when you're trading, you're always trading against the pool. You're not trading with somebody else. So you're trading against this like entity, not against like, well,
a virtual,
not exactly like. Whatever. No. But I mean more like, all right, so when you trade on an order book, right, there's someone on the other end that's taking your trade. So like you are directly trading with that person. With THORChain, you're trading with the pool, and the pool is always your counterparty. So you're never really exposing your coins directly to somebody else, where someone else can then say, oh, now the pool's off balance. Now I'm going to take, now I'm going to, make some money by arbing this pool or something like that. So there can be someone that'll come in and, kind of, and it's not really taking the other side of your trade. They're just playing within the same rules of like, I want to trade with the protocol, and there's a better price for me, so I'm going to just trade with it. So THORChain is kind of like this buffer that's always in the middle, and I'll say, I will take your trade no matter who you are, no matter what you are. Like, I'm going to do this trade, where like, if you're a near market maker, like there's very clearly people that you can and cannot transact with, like that exist, you know.
Yeah, so from like a
So
censorship
yeah,
resistant perspective, the way I could kind of see, so I mean, this has been like, these are hard problems to solve. Let's be very clear about that. And
yeah,
I'm sure if you have any gray hairs, it's probably been during the whole Bybit fallback and all that kind of stuff. Because like, holy crap. So there has been a lot of prevention of certain people from trading on THORChain through front ends, where front ends have said, we don't want to get in trouble. If you're a sanctioned address, we're not going to let you do that. You're going to have to go straight to the protocol itself. And so I guess kind of maybe the point is in an intent-based system where you're dealing directly with the market maker. The market maker can just block you completely. And so it's not like you get blocked out from all these front ends, but then you can still kind of find your way in. It's kind of like worst case, you just can't use it.
yeah. And it puts the market maker at a lot of risk too, because you're dealing directly with these people who are not KYC'd, but you're still you're still trading their assets directly through your entity. So it's like if you're a market maker, I think it opens you up to a lot of direct risk where it's like maybe there's a lot of entities who need to interact with, they need to know their counterparty, but I feel like you don't really know your counterparty when you're dealing with an intent-based system because they're not KYC people, which I don't think that we should KYC people like for any of this stuff, but like it opens you up to a lot of risk when you're doing that. But with a THORChain, you're just dealing with, you're always trading with the pool. You're not trading with, user XYZ. You're always trading with the pool, which I think is a very important distinction that is, but there's the trade-off is that it's less capital efficient. Like you need all that standby liquidity in the protocol. So it's like, there's always trade-offs with these types of things. And we're kind of at that point where there's nothing like they might be able to offer a better price at some points because, there's less overhead. They don't have to pay for security and liquidity. Like that's all free basically. So it's like, if your competitor has no overhead and, no overhead and no cost of inventory, like how do you compete? And we're doing just fine, I think, versus Near. Not that I think it's really a winner takes all competition. Like we obviously have our own niche, and they have theirs, and they can serve this other type of customer. But I think THORChain will be here for the long term to stay, just because of its like its properties of like and ethos. So hopefully that can talk a little bit about like what I think about how these two entities kind of interact with their users and what that means for them going forward. I think it's like on the surface they do offer like a similar service, but like how they actually do that is very different. And THORChain's much more like sturdy on the inside. Like during that October 10th flash crash, you can't get a swap from Near. Like there's the market makers are all they unplug their machines. Like THORChain Near.
Yeah, that would happen. I wasn't. To be honest, I think I was either out of town or I was doing something where I just remember retroactively the flash crash. I wasn't paying attention in real time. But do you know if Near actually did get paused at least during that time?
Well, so the protocol itself doesn't get paused, but it's like if there's no market makers giving you a quote, how do you trade? Like that's kind of what I mean is like you need an entity there that's always providing liquidity. If for some reason they decide not to provide liquidity, you can't get filled. So your price is zero for whatever asset that you have. It doesn't matter if all the centralized exchanges are turned off. That means that the ARBs are probably not making your market on Near. Your market maker is probably not. They need to de-risk. Like they can't be taking the other sides of trades, and they don't know what the prices are because all the centralized exchanges switched off. So I think in that instance, a lot of the market makers were kind of like, oh yeah, we need to protect ourselves right now, so preserve liquidity, preserve capital. So they kind of just like stop stuff, which is what caused like that crash just from liquidations and things. And then if there's no market maker giving you a price, you can't trade. So there's really not a lot of volume going through at that point if there was any. And later they turn back on, but it's, when you actually might need it, there isn't on liquidity.
Yeah, so I guess another thing, my understanding is if you have, let's say, a market maker with like 100K on something like Intense, then you do have a certain limit to how big of a swap you can put through there. as far as like maybe it's 30K, and that's as big as you can go for that amount of liquidity. Whereas if, with the AMM pool, if you have arbors around, you can you can just put massive swaps through, like
Yep.
several times the pool or larger than the pool itself, even though it might take a while. Right?
Yeah, 100% true. Like you can get filled for bigger than the pool size on a THORChain or a Maya that does streaming swaps. You can't get more assets than the market maker has on another protocol, or then they need to go and refill their liquidity. It's just like different model when you're interacting in that way.
Yeah, it's so. I guess from my mental model on this whole thing, it does kind of seem like the intense model, at least the way it's built right now, sort of takes the place of the centralized exchange, where it might not be all the way there, but it's kind of like it's more the direct threat to the centralized exchange than maybe something like THORChain, in that it's like it decentralizes a good chunk of what they do, but not everything. And so it just kind of like has a decentralized rail for the old school centralized market makers, all the other business as usual people, to still kind of take over. And so maybe it's still like a perfectly sort of symbiotic relationship, as far as you have like the you kind of have the, if you just want XYZ with whatever conditions, the intense will just get you there. But if when things break down, you go to the more decentralized version, or if you are being censored, you go there, or whatever else. Like let's just say there start to become a lot of like AM. Like I'm not exactly sure what Near plans to do for other privacy assets, such as like say Monero, like a spicier one than Zcash maybe. I wonder if there would be any issues with like getting market makers to deal with that, because maybe it becomes a little bit more legally complicated or just more risky. And then if you have something like that on a chain like THORChain, you can still do that. So like the more white hat, or the more like white, whatever you want to call it, like white market assets are like all just Near, and then the more white and maybe gray could be in the actually decentralized space maybe.
Yeah, I think that does make sense. Yeah, anything that's too risky, the market maker is just not going to touch. So you're not going to have liquidity for it. There's no point in them adding it. So if they want to do it, sure. I don't see it happening, but it might. I think that carves out a niche for like actually decentralized protocols. And I think that it's at this point it's pretty likely that THORChain and when I say THORChain, I also mean like Maya as well, are like the last actually decentralized cross-chain DEXes. Like I personally don't see any more actually spinning up. Best of luck to like the Sarai DEX folks and all that, but getting spun up to be like an actually decentralized validator set and community and all that, like it's incredible that it was even possible to do it this far. I don't see it ever happening again, but I think everything is going to go more towards the intense space, because it's a lot easier to build that up, because you just need one relationship to make a market to do that. But building a THORChain from ground zero is like, it seems like an impossible task to do that today.
Yeah, and it is kind of telling, because there's in crypto there's these Dino coins, right? The old school ones, and I was reviewing one of the pending pieces of crypto legislation in the Senate right now. One of the drafts, they kind of separated into 4 tiers of assets based on like super decentralized, pretty decentralized, meh, and then like XRP. Like as far as like the whole thing's concerned. And of the top 200 on CoinMarketCap, only 12 coins were in the top, and they were all like older than like 20, or older than Ethereum basically. Because back in the day, you could get a top coin by doing things like decentralized, and then now it's just like, I believe that ranking puts Solana in tier 3, where it's like a hybrid SEC CFTC jurisdiction because of the amount of like VC stuff, etc. So it might be kind of one of those things where the time to build a true decentralized protocol is kind of like, for a true decentralized exchange, it might be time's up already. Like you might not be able to launch one that really takes in 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Like, and just today I saw something around the Bybit Lazarus researchers looking at like which blockchains have like freeze functionality, and then they identified like 16 different blockchains that have like some kind of freeze mechanism, either like some function built in or like a config that validators can run or something like that. And to be clear, like people like the Bybit researchers have, which first off, like from the time that Bybit happened, I was helping them track those addresses on day one. Obviously, like THORChain has no ability to freeze funds or to censor swaps or like do anything of that sort. So there's nothing that we could actually do to freeze. But as far as like tracking and real time stuff, like I was like trying to help that out. Like as I remember, like as it was happening, it was pretty crazy. But they've reached out to us and it's like, oh yeah, you guys should implement these like protocols on like the THORChain like contract level of like on the Thor node like node software level of identifying who not like KYCing but like address checking basically. And my whole thing with that is like, first off, yeah, we already do that at the front end level. Like SwapKit does that a really good job of that. And I think that we should only support the front ends that do some kind of basic screening just for like their own protection, really, because they kind of need to know that they're not like profiting from bad funds or whatever. But I think it just wouldn't never work from the THORChain core level, because if you do that, you would basically make the whole chain reliant on whatever third-party entity exists. And like the whole point of THORChain and the architecture and the reason it exists is to be completely sovereign and not have any third-party dependencies. Where let's say if you need to check who the who the swapper is every time you swap on the Thor node level, whether you even observe the swap. That party owns your chain. They decide what happens on your chain. They are the super validator that can say this is valid and this is not. And I think that that's not a very good place for your blockchain to go. And also, I don't think it actually works. Like we've seen plenty of instances where it just goes like the AML software doesn't have isn't updated fast enough, doesn't have too many hops away, or it's like whatever. I've seen it plenty of times where it's like, yeah, it might stop it some number of times, and it one time it just doesn't, and it only gets worse from there when you try to implement something like that. So I think that it's just not ever feasible to implement it at the blockchain level, and obviously like an Ethereum would never introduce that like at the blockchain level, and it's not possible. Like you've seen it with the OFAC blocks where like, all right, yeah, X many of their nodes have these OFAC like compliant blocks. And even though they're still doing that, still like, 30-40% of blocks, or it was even more than that, I don't even remember. But most, like a lot of their blocks are not OFAC compliant. And so unless you have every validator adopt this thing, I don't think it would even work. So I think that there's a lot of issues with even trying to implement something like that on like a near, like you kind of have to do that because of the liability concerns that you might have. But once you start down that path, it'll never, I think it never gets like far enough for anyone to really be happy, because it doesn't truly work. And even KYC doesn't work. We all know this because you can just buy KYC or something like that. So I think that, I think we're in a good spot as far as like, THORChain is concerned. Like we're a very open, transparent, open source protocol. And yeah, I mean, I'm, it's been a tough like last year for like, working with THORChain for any number of reasons. But at the same time, I think that it's just an important protocol. And that's why I like wanted to start working on THORChain in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. And I have to say there is a lot of commonality with a lot of the kind of more focused OG projects where like the 2022 to now sort of era has been like rough. Like there's a lot of like, the Zcash, Zcash almost imploded like in 2023, like, and then do great. Dash, same thing. Like, not, I don't know how you say like how close to that, but like there's like a lot of these kinds of projects that have gone through some serious problem. And you'd even say like Monero, right, with the 51% attack stuff and the privacy exploits that are causing them to move to full chain membership proofs. Like a lot of them just hit those like, oh my gosh, this is like rough and stressful kind of like years, and are now kind of on the way out of that. I think all the ones I mentioned at least are on the way out, and probably some more. And I would even maybe lump Litecoin into that too after the post MWeb era and all the other stuff. So yeah, I mean, my point of view is always going to be it's a really good time to be involved in radical sovereignty tech. I mean, it doesn't matter if it sucks right now. It's not going to suck forever because this stuff matters.
Yeah, exactly. And taking any shortcuts won't help. So it's just continuing with the ethos of where we are, and building useful products for people. Like, I think that's just the name of the game. So I think we're right in that, and we're going to continue to compete in the marketplace of, like, you know, swap providers and, you know, people, you know, there's going to be challenges along the way, but I think that we're doing a decent job right now of just like staying competitive. Like, people like know of THORChain, although we can always do better. Like, we have this new marketing efforts going on and whatnot. So, you know, I'm you know, happy for the community to, like, that we're still kicking it. We're still there. And looking forward to just, you know, being here for, you know, the foreseeable future. So I don't think THORChain is going anywhere, and it's very anti-fragile. Like, I think if it would have died, it would have died. There's probably, you know, any number of times where it could have died along this point if it wasn't anti-fragile.
Yeah, for sure. Crazy stuff. Well, thanks very much for chatting. Where could people follow you particularly, but then also THORChain for any updates and stuff?
Yeah, sure. On you can follow me on Twitter, on X. I'm at FamiliarCow on Twitter. And for THORChain, best place is THORChain Twitter. We have Telegram group, and then we have a blog where we post all the major announcements. blog.thorchain.org, or just thorchain.org for all the other links. And you can swap right there. Swap in your favorite wallet, Ledger, Trust Wallet, and a bunch of other self-custody wallets too. And if you've never made a swap on THORChain, then, like, now's a great time to try.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds great. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you have a good one.